This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
You're listening to Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Hello and welcome to Tracks from the Edge, Trek FM show in which we provide audio commentary for every single new episode of Star Trek. I'm Mike.
And I'm Max.
And today we're going to be taking a look at Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Episode 6?
I think it's 6.
Yeah.
Let me do the math.
No, that's right. That's 6.
Yes, it's 6.
The Sound of Thunder.
It's called The Sound of Thunder.
Yeah. And I'm Mike.
And I'm Max again. We said this already.
All right. It's been a long day. I just had to talk my mom through buying an Echo off of Amazon. It was a very stressful.
It took several hours.
But we got there.
All right.
Before we get started, a couple of creator little bits.
He's Mike. I'm Max.
Something I forgot to mention last week or the week before is that we have now reached a point in the season where there's a new co-executive producer credited. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce her last name. Michelle Paradis. It might be Paradise, like it's spelled Paradise, but I'm assuming that it's not pronounced Paradise because, that would just be too simple, right?
I assumed Paradise.
Okay, Michelle Paradise.
That's what I assumed.
All right. She's a television writer who has written some television, including, I'd say most notably, The Originals, which is one of those shows which there's just too much content out there. I can't keep track. I don't know what The Originals is.
I believe that is a spin-off of The Vampire Diaries.
Really? Okay.
That's what I assumed based on my ability to analyze CW shows.
Okay. See, I'm down with that because I like spin-offs of random things, especially when they don't really have anything to do with the other thing. Like, I never really watched Baywatch, and I never really watched Baywatch Nights. Mm-hmm. But I'm a huge fan of the idea of Baywatch Nights, which is basically when David Hasselhoff is not guarding lives.
Watching Bays.
He's a private detective who, once the ratings started to dip, was investigating supernatural phenomenon like aliens and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like the idea that, that was always, I was like, how does he have time to do both? Like that was the thing that always ran through my mind. But then I thought to myself, I'm like, well, but in real life, David Hasselhoff has time to do both.
Yeah.
So I guess it's really not that much of a stretch.
Yeah, when you get right down to it, you got your seasons and you got your multiple episodes and you got your arcs and you got your shooting schedules. I mean, when you honestly analyze it, we only really see tops an hour of a person's life in a week.
Yeah. So why can't they have two jobs?
Yeah.
All right. So I think you're right about this Originals being a spinoff of the Vampire Diaries. And, I haven't seen the Originals, but I have seen like the first 2 or 3 episodes of the Vampire Diaries. And
Mike has seen more episodes of the Vampire Diaries than Game of Thrones.
That's the way it works. What do you want me to do about
no.
it?
Ask forgiveness from the internet. What you're saying is insane.
I'm just speaking the truth.
To who? Oh, God. All right.
So anyway, one other thing which I want to note about this. Well, okay, I should say, yes, this episode was written by Bowie Kim and Erica Lapolte, who have been on staff for, well, since season 1.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't like original writers. At some point I need to come up with like this chart of like the writer's room of Discovery, and how it's almost like a family tree or something at this point, like, or maybe like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's something. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them.
You don't know how to describe it, but it's something.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of it. I don't know what you're trying to say.
I'm trying to say that,
I'm pretty
like,
sure you also don't know.
It's kind of interesting how it starts at like the top, like with Alex Kurtzman, then it goes down to Brian Fuller, and then Brian Fuller hires, X, Y, and Z, and then X, Y, and Z hire A, B, and C. And then, Brian Fuller's gone, and then X, Y, and Z are gone. But then, these certain things remain, and then these certain things branch off and create other things and stuff like that.
Yes,
and
it is
just
like a family tree.
To the point where you get to the end.
More extreme because it's a very small time frame.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of generations already.
It's like they went through the Vihari like really quickly, like they amped up that signal and just went.
Yeah, and it turns out
started,
that
like,
when that happens, it's no big deal.
Basically, like the writers are like the threat ganglia, and they just keep on like falling off. And anyway,
that doesn't work. We're about to watch the episode that shatters this hypothesis into pieces.
All right. But then like certain people remain, like Kirsten Beyer, who's, my point being, Bowie Kim and Erica Lapolte, they came in, they're like second generation.
Yep, second gen.
Anyway, but still season 1. But regardless, anyway, they wrote the best episode of Discovery from last year, the one which sent them into the mirror universe. I forget the name of it right now, but it's the best. And then this is directed by Doug Erniakowski, who we've talked about many times before.
Oh, he comes up a lot.
Yep. He directed Highlander Endgame, Nurse 3D, bunch of other stuff. And yeah, one other thing. When I was watching this episode and the Baul were on screen, or even before they were on screen, they were doing the little Baul voiceover thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm being 100% honest here when I thought to myself, wow, that is a great voice. Like, they totally nailed it. Like, I'm like, everything about the Baul, right? Design wise, look wise, like technology wise, like pretty much everything about the Baul, I was like, this is completely working for me in a way that like a new species on Star Trek hasn't worked for me since maybe the Dominion. But one of the things which I loved about it was the voice of the Baul. I was just like, this is the coolest voice, and this is perfectly fitting, and there's something about it, and this has got it. Like, I'm wondering who the person is who's doing this voice. Like, I almost feel like it's someone who I should know, like James Spader or something like that. That's what I kept on thinking. It sounds like James Spader. Did they get James Spader to do the voice? And, so when the episode ended, like, I was watching the credits, and I'm like, I need to see who this voiceover person was. And I see who it is, and it's Mark Pellington.
Yep.
Which is not someone who I would have ever in a million years suspected it would be.
Is it the same one? I mean, the director one, is he also an actor?
He's been in this is his fourth thing, and I saw, granted, it's one of those user things, but someone added him to, according to IMDb, it's him. I mean, but I did a search. There aren't any other Mark Pellingtons. It's got to be him.
Okay.
The only he did a voice in the Mothman prophecies, which I'm wondering if he did the voice of the Mothman, if that's what it is. We'll get to that in a second. But as far as acting is concerned, he the only two movies that he's been in are Jerry Maguire and Almost Famous. So he's obviously friends with Cameron Crowe, which makes sense because he's a music video guy and Cameron Crowe is a music guy. And of course, but yeah, in Almost Famous, which is the where I always think of him from as an actor, he's the guy, the security guard who won't let William backstage for the Black Sabbath concert. He keeps on saying go back to the top of the rap with the other groupies,
Okay. Yeah.
That's him.
All
and
right.
then, he's like, you're not on the list. You're not on the list. And then the band opens up the door for him and then ends up locking him out. That's the biggest role he's ever had. Okay.
All right.
But more importantly, he is a director of note. You may not know his name, but you almost certainly know his work. He directed 1 billion music videos, most notably Jeremy for Pearl Jam.
Everyone knows that video. It's the one that ends where you're like, wait, what happened?
Only if you're watching the MTV cut. If you're watching the director's cut, it's very clear what happened.
Yes.
And then also he directed that U2 3D concert film thing.
Oh, I didn't see that, and I'm never going to.
This was back in the. I mean, you projected it, whether or not you saw it. You did project it. This was back in the day when 3D was the big new thing, and all the rest of it. And this it was just a concert film, but the 3D photography was absolutely gorgeous. I remember watching this movie and thinking this is the best 3D I've ever seen.
Oh my God.
It was at the time.
It looked so great, you guys. You could see the band. They were in 3D.
Yep.
That's it.
It looked really cool.
Okay.
Regardless, he also has directed a few movies, including a couple of my favorites, Arlington Road, very solid movie.
That movie's bananas.
I love it. I love it. And a movie which we watched together and showed together as projectionists back when it came out.
Yep.
The Mothman Prophecies.
That will come up when we talk about film projection disasters.
Oh, did we have a static wrap during the screening of that one?
No, bro. We had a full-on thrown print.
Okay, during the screening, though?
Yeah.
I vaguely remember that. Wow. Sorry, Mark Pellington. We didn't mean to destroy the print of that movie you spent all that time making, but you know what? Sometimes static is our baul. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
Anyway.
Should we start talking smack about this episode?
No, I just want to say here, Mothman Prophecies. I don't know if you forgot the plot of that movie.
What, the plot of the movie where there's a mysterious Mothman that appears in Philadelphia or something?
And people have these visions of this angel-like creature thing.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
It's a weird vision of a man with wings,
Mm-hmm.
and then a disaster happens,
Mm-hmm.
but people survive because of the visions?
I'm just saying. Okay?
I see what you're saying. I know what you're saying. I do agree that Star Trek Discovery is plagiarizing the Mothman prophecies, and I think Mark Pellington should pursue legal action.
That's not exactly what I was trying to say.
Pretty sure that's what you were saying.
I'm just saying, I don't think it's a coincidence that they got Mark Pellington to do this voice.
Okay, sure.
I'm just saying. Anyway, so should we start this up?
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay. So we are going after the CBS All Access logo cuts to black, which is approximately 8 seconds in on the US version, but it's right before the first frame of picture, regardless of which version you're watching. And Max, if you're ready.
Oh, I'm so ready.
We're going to start this up in 3, 2, 1, start. Previously on Star Trek Discovery, there's
Section
Giorgio.
31 badge, Giorgio.
I was like, oh, so Giorgio is going to be in this episode. This opening, credit, I mean, not credits, but, this previously on sequence, it is very comprehensive to the point that, like, as someone who had sort of an idea from the trailer last week of what this episode was going to be about, I felt very anxious watching this previously on, because I felt like they were not properly conveying the information which we would need going into this, even though everyone I don't know why, I was just like, but you got to explain this thing too, guys. What are you doing? No, you're not. I don't know. It was weird. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff in here, and a lot that I don't know whether it's necessary or not, but whatever. So,
I mean, I think I've said it before, but in this day and age, I don't think that previously ons are really required.
Yeah, they're not required, but they are helpful for those of us who, might be like, I need to finish that, and then 3 months later go back to it. Okay, so now look at this. I mean, we're talking about here like the first, let's say, 4 minutes of this episode, and just look at how this is constructed visually. Okay, we see Kaminar. It has a nice little dissolve to the Kaminarian qualities in Saru's quarters. There's a little there's a lot of sort of like rope-esque wipes in here where there are cuts to other things, but I mean the transitions from scene to scene in here are just, they're so elegant. Door closes, door opens on other scene. It just continues. And I counted. I'm like, when do we see like the first cut, which is just like normal coverage and not something which was like designed from the ground up? And the first one comes like 4 minutes into this episode. That's really impressive. So there's that little wipe from one display to another display, and this one here is really kind of cool because there is a little bit of a wipe coming up right here, but we just saw shirtless Saru, and there's someone walked across frame, and now this is clearly a new shot, but it's supposed to look like the same shot, and we're going to see fully clothed Saru walk into the frame. That's pretty cool because that he had to take, that he's obviously not wearing all that stuff underneath his thing, right? Because he's like super skinny and all that good stuff.
You also know that it's got to be really hard to get that thing on. I mean, it would have taken him a lot longer just to get his arms through those sleeves.
Yeah, I mean the way that the shoulder socket things are, like the really high socket things, like that was the thing that they talk about in like the Indiana Jones jackets, like the Raiders of the Lost Ark jackets have like much higher
socket things,
armpit things,
socket things.
So they're not. I mean, it's a much sleeker look, but it's not as easy to just throw on to your arm.
Yeah, when you got like a really high and tight socket thing, it really helps to have like a second person to like help get your arm through it.
Yeah. So, I was watching this scene and I was like, hey, even though he was probably not being serious at the time, Max totally called the baby threat ganglia and the adult threat ganglia. I mean, that's essentially what this is, right?
No, I mean, I wasn't really... I wasn't throwing it out there as like a joke thing. I was like, this seems like what they're going for, and it's dumb.
I don't know about it being dumb, but, whatever.
I don't know. I think I'm hung up on this idea that like I had right at the very beginning of this show when Saru said, like what he said about his people and how like they evolved with this prey instinct. They evolved this behavior, and the idea that this episode proposes that that's not true, that his people did not evolve as a prey species, that this threat ganglia thing evolved when they were the dominant species, or at least not significantly the prey species. That it again, I mean, not only does Saru's biology does not make sense, now the changes to his biology make the original nonsensical biology make less sense.
I'm not sure, because I mean, we still don't know what the dynamic was. And, they specify like evolved Kelpians versus unevolved Kelpians versus Baul, and it almost seems like they're in a way like different species. I don't know exactly how that works. I mean, obviously we don't know. I think the well, I mean, who knows? 2,000 years, a lot can happen, but
not a lot can happen in 2,000 years from an evolutionary biology perspective.
Well, no, but I don't think that did happen. I think evolutionarily, it hasn't changed much, right?
Right, which means that his biology... I mean, look, this is not an evolutionary biology podcast, but I mean, like, I honestly could talk about this for multiple episodes, and I do have a significant problem with the looseness of the evolution of his character, and his biology doesn't conform to any like understood patterns. There's no species on Earth that has this instinct around being prey, and there is no prey species that reaches a point that traverses some sort of biological Rubicon and then somehow becomes a predator. That's not a thing. Like, we have plenty of species that start like that are born as very vulnerable predators, and then they grow up and become effective predators that are no longer vulnerable. They're able to defend themselves. Lions start very, very vulnerable. They can be picked off by a hyena, but they're still lions. And as they grow, they become better fighters, and they are no longer as vulnerable. But there is no species that starts as a field mouse and then becomes a honey badger. That's not a thing. So if... I'm very frustrated.
Okay. All right. It's fair to be frustrated,
They promised me something that I could not understand, and they delivered me something that I can understand as easy.
And, that's part of like that whole, writer tree that we're talking about, right? Because as we said before, like, there's no doubt that Saru is a Brian Fuller creation, right? I mean, Brian Fuller, we're just talking about things thematically, looking at Hannibal, which I've only seen 2 episodes of.
Look, I mean, like, I've seen a lot of Brian Fuller stuff, and I am inclined to say that the best version of Saru is one that we don't get an explanation for.
Yeah, and
maybe, I don't know if there is a way of depicting this society, this civilization, where there are 2 intelligent species. One is predator, one is prey. I don't think that's doable.
Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, just for anyone who may not know, I mean, Brian Fuller is very outspoken when it comes to animal rights and stuff like that. And, clearly Saru is supposed to be representative of cattle, as they say, even in this episode, right?
And the justification for this this transformation is he was treated like cattle because he's so dangerous. I mean, can you imagine what would happen if cows got the upper hand on us?
Hang on. I just need to point this out. When the ship lands here, you see the 03 painted on the hull, and they say, "Oh, Giorgio found you. She was a lieutenant on the Archimedes at this time." Back in the Brightest Star, when that happened originally in the short trek, it actually said like SHZ or whatever the abbreviation is for the Shenzhou. It was that was they just retconned that thing from 4 months ago, 1 month ago, 2 months ago, but whatever.
7 months ago.
Anyway, so
11
sorry,
months ago.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah. So
that's fine.
So yeah, I mean, clearly that was something which Fuller came up with, and my whole thing is like, okay, this is a thing which is here. This is a thing which exists in this show. How do you make that like crazy idea? Like that is a completely out there sci-fi concept, right? Which maybe Fuller had all worked out, but maybe didn't get there yet. Maybe he had it all
worked out. Maybe he didn't have it all worked out.
Maybe
either way, this is not a good version of it.
I'm just curious how much of this was what he intended, because I have a feeling that if you were to talk to him and say, like, what was your original concept for Saru's origin, or what was it at when you left, it would not be this. I really do think.
I have a real problem with the idea that the prey species in his history is basically just a version of our like prey species, like a cow, that is just waiting for a chance to get one up on us. I mean, like, to me, this is the equivalent of someone saying, like, you know, if cows got the chance, they would eat us. And that's just not true. That's just ridiculous. That's an absurd thing to say. And this is just another version of this permutation. Like, oh, we have to hunt to survive. And it's like, no, you don't. I mean, not only do we not have to, they live in space and can make food out of anything. So, no, this is not good.
But see, that's even the thing here. I mean, and like one of the reasons why I think like this isn't, whether better or worse, I mean, it's possible that his idea was worse than this. You know, who knows, right? But better or worse, I feel like this is clearly not what his original intention was, because for one thing, like, as is revealed, like, they're not, I mean, I don't think that they are eating the Kelpians, right? I think that they are just...
No, they're just
killing them. Out of like self-preservation. But yeah,
maybe that seems totally reasonable. There's no indication that they're eating them. I mean, you have to assume that they're doing something with the remains. I mean, probably recycling them. So, I mean, maybe in some sort of larger sense they're eating them, but like that's not really the issue. The issue is the Ba'ul have a paranoia. And they have this concern and some sort of genetic memory. They're so terrified of this other species that they feel the need to control and subjugate them.
I don't think it's even genetic memory. I think it's just straight up
culture,
history.
I don't. But like, it can't be living history, because presumably these things aren't 2,000 years old. I mean, that would be a big deal. You'd think that they bring that up, like, oh yeah, the one that you met, yeah, he was there. It was his plan. I don't think that's the case,
right? But unlike the Kelpians, the Ba'ul know what went down 2,000 years ago.
Yes, and the reason I say genetic memory is because we have to assume that they have some sort of relatively similar psychology to what we understand as normal humanoid behavior, and all of the humanoid species seem to have a relatively similar approach to self-identity. So the only way to justify this is that they are either really concerned with their species' history and they are maintaining this power struggle because they believe it is required. Because at this point, they are so more technologically advanced, they don't really need to keep doing it. They could just leave.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, there's no reason why they have to be this concerned about this other species. And if they are so terrified of them, why don't they just wipe them out? Like, there is no real good explanation for any of this. The Ba'ul are very concerned about keeping this other species in check when they have the resources to either ignore that threat or eliminate it. So, again, another problem with the logic in play here.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that, like, just because, they have the technology to wipe out the Kelpians doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to completely. I mean, I think they found They don't need to. They don't need to wipe them out. They could ignore them. They don't need to keep them around. I mean, they don't need either thing. Yeah, you're saying that they could leave and stuff like that. I mean, I think not to place like our morals onto them or whatever, but I do feel like they're not too concerned with the well-being of the Kelpians, and I also feel like they probably don't want to leave the planet. One of the things which I'm not saying that there's a direct correlation to this at all, but one of the things which I kind of took from this episode and the way that they were talking about sort of like the back and forth and the power struggle and everything is kind of like, let's just say like a place, let's just say historically speaking, like a piece of land which is disputed by, multiple groups of people, whatever they may be.
Yeah. Yeah, so they decided to take a narrative about respecting life and just retroactively change it into something else without really thinking about how that doesn't really make sense.
One of the things that I noticed while watching this episode was how it's in widescreen 2.39 to 1. Obviously, it's been this way all season and everything like that. But there was just a moment there where I just took note of it. Like I was sitting there watching this on my TV, watching new Star Trek on my TV, and I saw this beautiful widescreen image, and I thought back to like watching Star Trek The Next Generation, 25 years ago on like a little black and white TV in my bedroom in junior high with
Michael grew up in the past
where like you had to like, put the antennas in a certain way in order to avoid like the wavy lines and all that stuff. And I was just like, wow, like what a time to be alive, like Star Trek shot with anamorphic lenses. Like it's just, it's something that we should take note of and appreciate.
Again, I am frustrated.
Okay.
Saru was a very interesting character because his origins were so weird that I couldn't imagine what they were. And it seems to be the case that none of the writers could imagine it either.
Can you imagine being placed in that box, though? And I mean...
Oh, that would be a fascinating box.
It may be.
Let me tell you something here.
Okay.
There are a lot of boxes that Star Trek has. That box is very interesting because that box means that you have to think of something that not only has no real world historical or scientific counterpart, but you also have to make it make sense in a dramatic context. That is a fascinating box.
Oh.
That is the kind of box where you like convene a think tank and you get the best philosophers and engineers and bioethicists. You get all of these people together and you say, let's figure out how to make this character work. How does this person evolve in this environment? Because we've said a couple cryptic things and we need to make them not lies. But
Right.
instead, they decided to make them lies.
What I'm saying is, since that involves that level of, I mean, just for lack of a better word, let's say talent from across the board, in all these different fields and everything like that. I'm not saying that it wouldn't be fun to work on or anything, but I am saying that it's extremely hard to get out of that box.
I agree. It's extremely hard, which is why I would have accepted we're not going to go there.
And just said, like, we're not going to talk about his origin.
I mean, we can't. We can't. It's too weird. It's too mysterious. We don't know how to depict it. We don't know how to make it make sense on a practical level. So we're not going to try, because ultimately it might not make sense. This might be the equivalent of saying that somebody is, their father was a dragon and their mother was a pixie, and it's like, how does that even work? Like on like a logistical level, like how do their I don't think that makes sense. But like in a mythic level, you go, fine, whatever. I accept this on concept. So I'm not gonna dig into this, because whatever the backstory there is, it's pretty weird. I mean, the Norse gods are always doing crazy things. I mean, like Loki turned into a fish. He became a woman for years. Weird stuff happens in mythology, and you just go, fine, we're not gonna know exactly what it looked like, so we're not gonna expect them to depict it. But like in this case, they're like, well, we've got to depict it. And I'm like, no, I don't think you did have to depict it.
Well, I am kind of with you there, because certainly that is something which the fans want, right? I mean, like, can you imagine, like, if they never talked about, I mean, we dealt with that for a year. People are like, when are we going to get, more? I mean, you were saying the same thing. When are we going to get more Saru? All this stuff. When are we going to find out more about his origin and everything? So,
because I do really want, when like he was first introduced and like this gauntlet was laid down, like this incredibly weird, mysterious thing was said. And I was like, okay, if they've got an idea for that, like how that works, I want to hear it. I want to know what it is. And then immediately afterward, I heard we're going to learn a lot about Saru pretty soon. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, thank God. So I got my hopes up. And then they were dashed against the rocks. And I was like, okay, so what we learned about Saru is that when things are chill, he freaks. Not great, guys. And then they were like, oh, we're going to go to Saru's homeworld. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting. Oh, turns out that wasn't quite interesting enough. That didn't really explain anything. It just kind of edged around the issue. I mean, the Ba'ul, the threat ganglia turning into spike shooters, all of this is midichlorians. It's midichlorians all over again. It's a loose explanation to cover up everything, and it explains nothing.
Okay, that's fair. Now, all I'm saying with that is that if they would say like, "Oh, we're just not gonna talk about it,"
if they had said that, yeah,
I'm not saying that would have been the wrong choice, but oh my God, the internet would have gone all Ba'ul on them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree, and I'm better with that. I'm more comfortable with them saying like, this is not a thing that we can depict. Like this is a mythological thing. This is a mythic character, and his origins are confusing, and we will not be able to understand them. His culture is so alien. If we put it on screen, you would be like, "What is happening?"
It's interesting because like I agree with you about the idea of like sometimes less is more, not to be cliche or whatever.
Let's be cliche. Come on, guys.
But back in the day, I was like, no, you gotta explain how it works. You gotta make it work and everything like that. And over time, I've definitely sort of abandoned that philosophy and been like, no, you don't really need to. And you know what? One of the things which was really sort of a turning point for me was like Battlestar Galactica. You know, especially the way they dealt with some elements in
some elements in that.
In particular, I mean, I guess
like the Starfield that they see in season 2.
I was thinking like Starbuck, and how that character's story wraps up. And
I'm just throwing out the one thing that they never managed to work.
Okay, and you know that thing, like that story. Let's just say Starbuck's story was like one that people had a lot of problems with, and to me, I was just like, this works. This completely works for me, because you get what they're trying to do and everything like that, and maybe that's what it is. Maybe you're right. Like the point that Fuller was trying to convey was conveyed. You don't need an explanation in order to do that. And I'm not saying, because then you're getting into some tricky territory with what was this person who was working on a show trying to say, and are you supposed to just like honor what they were doing because there's a reason why they're not working on it anymore? And if you as a creator want to tell a story which is meaningful to you, you should not be concerned with what the guy before you was doing. You know, I mean, I'm talking about to a reasonable extent. Like, you have to tell a story which is meaningful to you.
I agree. And the only places in which you should not adhere to that, like the only places where like you should defer to the original intent, is where you don't have a better idea.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that.
And this is one of those.
But there is, I mean, so taking away some of the mechanical difficulties, right? And going back to sort of the concept in a broader sense of what Fuller was trying to do, which was tell a story which was allegorical to, you know, Earth.
Yeah. Cows in particular there. Can you imagine how messed up it would be if they decided to kill us? They have 4 stomachs.
But I'm not talking
they
about...
They could eat 4 of us at once.
I'm talking about...
I know that doesn't work.
On a larger scale, saying like, ignoring what it was Fuller was trying to say, but how he was trying to say it, and that he was trying to say it. Like, I think that despite I mean, hey, we have a whole podcast which is dedicated to pointing out how movies get film projection wrong, right? Mm-hmm. And we watch something like The Nice Guys and are just like, how could they possibly have a Christie elf in 1977? Movies are lies, you know? So,
yeah. So our whole mythology breaks down when we're watching The Nice Guys.
Right. So
we're like, how do we go forward from here? I don't believe any of this is happening.
Right. So to say like, you know, evolutionary science doesn't matter in Star Trek. I mean, yes, I realize.
Yeah, it does, and it's all over the place.
Okay.
It doesn't matter, and they talk about it constantly.
Right.
It's great. It's great, guys. They don't know how to make it work, and it's a constant subject.
But just like The Nice Guys is a good movie, despite its lack of film projection history.
I mean, to me, this feels like somebody like me who knows very little about chemistry writing Breaking Bad. I don't know enough about chemistry, and I would probably go to a chemist and ask them for explanations for how things worked. But if I were in a situation where I'm like, oh, it's the 23rd century, all right, whatever. You could make meth out of anything.
Yeah. So my point being, like, I think the story that they're telling works on a metaphorical level, even if the science behind it is problematic.
I think that this is where the problem comes in, because I don't think that this works on a metaphorical level. I think that this actually is where it all kind of falls apart.
Okay.
Because what we have is what this does is it changes his biology in a way that doesn't hold together. But like he's got this threat ganglia. Fine, let's assume that this is not an evolutionary biology thing. Let's assume it's a cultural thing. Let's say that his biology fit his culture. Fine, whatever. That's dumb, but I'm moving on. So he's got the threat ganglia. And why does it exist? Because it seems as though his people live in virtual paradise until the time of the Hari, when they get culled. So what is the purpose of the threat ganglia?
No. Okay, I get that, right? I get that. But I guess what I'm thinking is, like, with threat ganglia being a thing that's built into the character before, this story is
threat ganglia is just there. Yeah, fine. I'm okay with that. Look, the moral of the story is what? What are we saying here about power dynamics? That people hold power over former threats indefinitely? Sure, that's true. It happens a lot. It happens in culture. It's still happening today. What is this telling us about that?
I think what they're trying to say, I think what they're trying to say by showing this from the perspective really of Starfleet and everything is that thing which Star Trek has always tried to say, which is, we should strive for a peaceful solution, and that things are maybe not always what they appear, and that you should not necessarily judge things at face value or judge people at face value.
Sure, I agree. Saru really does come off kind of like a jerk in this episode.
He does, but at the same time, like, because it's weird, because and maybe that's my threat ganglia, which is like avoid confrontation at all costs, or something like that. But like when he starts like yelling at Pike, I was like, why are you being so rude, Saru?
Because it's easier to write a wild, dramatic swing for a character.
Okay, but the fact of the matter is, when I watched this the second time, and I kind of knew where it was going and everything like that, and I was listening to what Saru was saying, because I think maybe the first time through I was like, oh no, they really are doing evil Saru, and then the second time, like, knowing how it all like ends and knowing like what it is that they were doing, I was kind of like, nothing that Saru says is wrong, and if I were in his position, regardless of whether or not I had threat ganglia, I'd probably be saying the exact same thing in the exact same way.
All right, so I have two issues. Number one is I find it a little bit frustrating that they deploy this crazy solution to like evolve all of the Kelpians.
Yeah, I mean,
to me, I'm like, hey, hold on a second, guys. This is the first one in a long time. We don't know how this goes.
Exactly.
This might be like stage 2 of a 6-stage process.
Right.
Like, what if stage 4 is like, man, babies taste great. Like, we don't know what it is. Like, so this seems like a really dicey thing to do. And honestly, this is way over the line when you talk about the Prime Directive.
Well, yeah.
They changed the biology of a civilization that did not have space travel. This is bananas stuff.
Well,
secondly, the aliens they're called the Ba'ul, we only see one of them. He's a real spindly little oily guy, and he arises out of a pool of black oil.
Yes.
Is he Armus? Are they the same species?
I mean, it's certainly that comparison has been made, and I mean,
has it? Because I'm not on the internet webs, but like when he came out of there, I was like, whoa, wait a minute, hold on a second.
But it could be
doing
right?
this.
I mean, is there?
the reason I point out that we only see one of them is because I want to say that they are the same species, and this one is just a really slim one. You know, they get the one we saw in Next Gen was maybe really out of shape. You know, he'd put on some pounds. He'd eaten a lot of red shirts over the years. So he'd put on a few LBs, you know, and this one is just a real svelte, you know, real swimmer body, you know, like he's in really good shape, very tall, very powerful. And this is the difference. This is a different individual, same species. Come on, confirm that. I will not forgive everything in this episode, but you'll get some points from me.
For whatever it's worth, I'm fairly certain that the guy who plays the Baul dude here is the same guy who played some aliens in the last Alien movie. So, you know, makes sense, right?
Yeah, they need really tall and very skinny people to wear those suits. So that makes sense.
Yeah. That's a nice shirt that Burnham has there. I haven't checked yet, but I'm assuming you can get it on StarTrek.com.
It looks like a regular old shirt with a little insignia on it.
Actually, I'm lying. Of course, I totally checked to see if you could get it on StarTrek.com, and you can't. But I'm assuming it's coming. God,
guys, so. Get on the ball. I mean, first Saru's backstory is destroyed, and you don't have the shirt Michael wears.
Yeah,
get it together. Come on, CBS. What's going on? What's going on, CBS?
Yeah.
I thought that we were on the same page when, like, you know, you announced the Twilight Zone thing and all the new Star Trek series and Picard show. Come on, this is a really basic one that you're missing. This is some little league nonsense.
Yep. So I know that they reuse a lot of sets on this show, obviously, because the sets that they have are so incredibly sophisticated, and there's only so much money that you have to make this thing, you know?
Yeah, that's right. Money is finite.
But
there's only so much of it.
But this is the first set where I ever think I noticed it without someone pointing out that, like, it's definitely the transporter room, I think, from the Shenzhou or whatever, you know, like they do not do a good job of hiding that here, but whatever, doesn't matter.
I mean, when it's a sci-fi hallway, you know, it's gonna have 6 sides.
Well, no, I mean, like those little light pole things in the back are like a dead giveaway, but it doesn't matter. I'm really digging the lighting in this thing. The set design is great. The Baul design is great. Like, all of their technology and the visual effects with their spaceships, especially with like the clouds with like the light behind. This is a gorgeous looking episode. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I know you like to point out when things look good, and the reason I don't point out when things look good is because I haven't really thought that anything looked particularly bad. Like, if I have an issue with something, I'll bring it up, but like I don't get super excited when everything looks great.
Well, I mean, that is a thing, which I think is probably worth noting because it comes up a lot online, which is basically, here's a typical thing. We get this comment on a weekly basis. On a weekly basis, someone will say something, which is like,
how come you aren't screen specific?
Well, there's that, which, boy, I think we've kind of shattered that in this one more than any other one. I mean, geez, we haven't talked about anything that's on screen. But you know what? I think the discussion that we had was good, right?
I agree. I have no issue with it, so I'm not going to complain.
That's good. I like
very
that.
Meta. I'm very proud of that one.
That's good. I thought that was a good one. But anyway, my point being that every week we get someone who says, "Hey, I appreciate your criticism, but I wish you would also point out what you like about the episode. And I can understand that. But at the same time, like, I remember going back to, like, one of the very first things that we did was when we were doing audio commentaries for movies, and you were saying, like, let's do a commentary for Transformers 2. Let's do a commentary for, I forget some of the terrible movies that you suggested, and they were all terrible movies. And then I said, like, well, let's do a commentary for Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is one of your all-time favorite movies. And
yeah, for sure.
you were like, why would we do that? And I'm like, well, because it's one of our all-time favorite movies. And you said something along the lines of, so what? Are we just going to say, like, this is really good the whole time? And
thinking back on it, I was totally right.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with you on that, because certainly you can analyze things and talk about why they are brilliant.
I don't think that it's hard to have a good conversation when you're talking about something that is really good. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. It's just I don't really get excited about saying, "Hey, it was really cool how that whole idol scene was constructed."
No, but I mean, but you can do that.
Great.
I mean, like, you can do that, and you can do that. And the thing which is, I think sort of beneficial in that regard is, especially if there are people who are like, I don't understand why you like Raiders of the Lost Ark, then you can say, like, well, let me break it down for you, and you can say, this is exactly why this movie is great. And certainly I've done that a bunch of times, whether it's with things.
I've done that with Ghostbusters too.
Sure, you have.
Because I had to. That's the difference. I was put in a position where I had to say, here's the thing. I think the popular opinion on this movie is wrong, and I will explain why. But if everyone's on the same page, what are you doing? What is the point of this?
That could be, and certainly, that is something which happens. But I at the same time, there have been things like, I remember Tisto did a commentary for Empire Strikes Back, which is one of my all-time, if not my all-time favorite movie, and his analysis was so solid that I kind of left that podcast thinking, like, that's why he just articulated why I love this movie.
I agree. There is definitely a place for it. It's just, it's not that interesting to me.
Okay. All right. But anyway, I forget why I bring that up, but I brought it up.
You were talking about how everything looks good on this show.
Oh yeah. And how you,
and I don't disagree.
Care, yes.
I have no issues with that.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Saru.
I think the only visual I've ever complained about is how the spore jump looks a little silly to me.
Oh, that's crazy. I love the spore jump. It's great. It's great. Saru, he's really good at building communication devices out of random pieces of Baul technology.
This guy is MacGyver. This guy can slap together a communication device out of a toothpick, some rubber bands, and a loose Band-Aid. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so we're at the point where they're talking about, turning everyone at the same time. And,
yeah, I guess my thinking is, like, and again,
I don't like how they did this. They really
yeah, and I mean, I understand, for the sake of storytelling and everything, and it's like, let's get through this, and believe me, I am very appreciative of them skipping over things when we know what the conclusion will be. But the fact that they were just like,
also, what if after they do this, like, why don't they bring up the possibility that they're still killing all of them?
Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, that's what I was going to say is, like, what you don't know what the thing is, and the idea that, I mean, this same is true in baking, right? Like, you can't just say, like, well, it took this long for Saru to go through the Vihare, so if we do, send the signal out twice as fast, then they can go through the Vihari twice as fast. Like, it doesn't, like, how do you know that that's going to work? How do you know that the intense pain that they're going through right now isn't going to kill them all, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of issues. I have, like, to me, I'm thinking in this situation, I thought this solution was a little bit nuts. Because to me, like, let's say you're on the Discovery and this is happening. Like, they're going to kill all of the Kelpians, and the only way to potentially save them is to transform them all simultaneously, to change the biology of every single one of them. Well, we obviously can't do that. That's crazy. But what we can do is save as many of them as possible. And all we really need to do in order to say that we did the best is beam enough of them onto the ship so that we can preserve the species. We can't save all of the individuals, but we might be able to save the species. And that's what I would do. This plan is bananas.
And I mean, it's again, I guess, with the science not tremendously being sound, like the idea that, yeah, like they say they worked it out, and if Tilly says, "Oh, I worked it out," I'm going to believe Tilly.
Oh, I believe Tilly when she says anything.
So she said, "Oh, well, I worked it out," and then it's like, okay, well, if you know that this plan is going to work, and they're confident that it's going to work, then okay, I could see that as being, because, I mean, you talk about like General Order 1 or whatever, and, even here they say like, well, it's different because they're aware of the technology and everything, but it's also different because you do have like a representative of this species saying like, I want you to do this. Like, there's something to be said for that. And I mean, I'm not saying that it's necessary, because you could have someone who's a representative of the species who's evil or something like that, and all the other people who are part of the species are like, that person doesn't speak for me. But
yeah, he's kind of rude, and like, honestly, we don't know what's up with him. We assume he's cool because he's been cool historically, but he's gone through a weird metamorphosis and he's acting really crazy.
Exactly. So but I think with everything, all of the information at hand, I think that it's okay for them to do this. And here's an interesting thing. I did not pick up on this until they were actually saying it, but we are zooming in on Saru's eye in order to say like, hey, look, we're seeing more detail on this thing than we've seen before.
And we finally know who this is. It's Evangeline Lilly as the Wasp.
That's exactly what I said on Slack. I'm like,
really?
All I could think of is, because they're like, I was talking to some people, and someone had a theory, which was a good theory, but they also have a Discovery podcast, and I don't know their release schedule, so I don't want to steal the sound of their thunder. Did you see what I did there? That did not work at all. I apologize for that. But
no, it worked great.
Their theory,
it made you look bad.
Their theory was very sound, and I think there's something to it, even though it seems a little too on the nose to be accurate. But they were like, that's all that I could think of. And I said, all that I could think of is that it was the Wasp. Mm-hmm. But
my thinking is that they're going to, at some point, say that the Red Angel is a time traveler. It's a Sam Beckett situation.
I think it's Future Guy, right? It's Future Guy.
It's not Future Guy.
Okay, but I'm saying,
I think it's someone we know from the show, possibly Michael Burnham.
Okay, that's what the other person said. So
they're zipping around through the past in order to right what once went wrong.
Right, especially with Michael being the person who feels guilty about Spock, and all that stuff. I mean, yeah, it just kind of, there's something to that makes sense, but at the same time, there's something to that which seems to be sort of antithetical to what Star Trek is. It's going to get messy. I'm just saying, it's going to get messy, right?
I agree. I think we're seeing it. I think this is the mess.
Yeah. So it's interesting. But yeah. But, television manufacturers have really struggled with selling 4K TVs because humans can't really tell the difference between 4K and 2K. And I really do think that if they wanted to maximize their profits, they should go to Kaminar, because Kelpians could appreciate the difference between 2K and 4K.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's an untapped market right there. I mean, 4K UHD.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like passive 3D TVs aren't happening anymore, which is a bummer. But
yeah, not really.
That would be a good thing too.
Yeah. So for some reason, they decided to give Volk here a uniform. I forgot the guy's name. Tyler. There you go.
You don't trust this guy.
But he's got his Section 31 badge on.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird. But then again,
hey,
I guess the other guy
guy
has a uniform on that's I guess when in Rome, you wear a toga.
When in Rome, you wear a Section 31 badge in the mess hall with everybody walking around going, "Hey, dude, what's with your weird badge?" And he's like, I'm in an organization that you don't know about that's part of Starfleet. That's not going to raise any red flags.
Yeah, well. I mean, we did see Section 31 people on the ship in like the first episode that we see Discovery, so...
Sure. I mean, the Discovery has been populated by Section 31 for a while. Like it's been inextricably linked with it for a long time. So like it makes a kind of sense that there would be some knowledge of it there. I just think there might be a little bit too much to justify people not even 100 years later having never heard of it and not knowing that it's a thing and finding it impossible.
I mean, Section 31 are the Jedi of the Star Trek universe, apparently, right?
Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah, maybe a Red Angel comes back and changes past the Section 31 is secret. That would be a way of dealing with it.
Oh, that could work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So once again, Saru is dealing with his people, and his sister is there, and I can see the family resemblance. They've got similar freaky makeup on.
It is though interesting, like because obviously Saru's makeup, I mean, it's some of the best makeup in Star Trek history, of course, and everything. And then like you look at all the other Kelpians, and it's like they really did not have the time or money to put as much detail into it as they did, because like Saru's is like super detailed, and everyone else is just kind of like the broad strokes.
Yeah, I think that it's probably a stylistic choice. I don't think that it was necessarily a budgetary thing.
I could see them doing that, but I think more than anything, it was just like, we don't have the money,
Who's Michael's best friend? Who's Saru's best friend? Is Michael Saru's best friend, and is Saru Michael's best friend? Because I feel like Michael's best friend is Tilly.
Well, Tilly's best friend is definitely Michael, right?
Yes.
But I got to think that, I've got to think that maybe Michael and Tilly are best friends, but Saru and Michael have like a different relationship. Like maybe they're like more like brother and sister.
I agree. I like I'm shipping a friendship between Saru and Culber because I think those two should hang out. Like they could have their own spin-off.
Well, I mean, they lay the groundwork for that here. I mean, that was one of the weird things about it. I mean, like Culber is clearly like on edge. Like he's like, whoa, I've been through a lot, and I'm kind of freaking out, right?
I'm also kind of not entirely the real me.
Right, exactly.
Like,
And so
there's a lot going
so
on
he's
there.
freaking out, and it's very clear that that's happening, and Saru seems to pick up on that, but like Stamets is like, "Hey, man, what's going on? So we getting dinner tonight? Oh, you never told her about your scar?" And it's like,
Yeah,
what about like the whole like he doesn't have a scar anymore? Like what? I mean, like Stamets really seems to be sort of like completely oblivious to Culber.
Well, we established in a recent episode that Stamets does not understand how people work.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
He doesn't quite get it.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely more engineer than therapist. He
reminds me of you, to be honest.
He's I can see that.
Yeah. All right. Well, be sure to check out our Discovery coverage throughout the week. Live from the Edge with Bruce and Brandy, Postcards from the Edge with Amy, Notes from the Edge with Chris, you know what? I mean, look, I totally get it because it's by far like the best Discovery podcast out there. It's coming. He is going to do it. It is happening. He's just really busy right now and he doesn't have the time, but it is coming. So don't worry. You will get your Notes from the Edge. But in the meantime, you could listen to all those other shows we were just talking about, or also the Edge main show with Patrick. You'll find them all in the main feed for the Edge or in the Trek.fm master feed. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Discovery, and the best place to do that is in the Babel Conference, which is our listeners group on Facebook, where Amy Nelson will collect your feedback for Postcards from the Edge. You can also find us on Twitter at TrekFM or send us email using the contact form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and choose the Edge. We'd like to thank our associate producers, Norman C. Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, Shoaib Mirza, Richard Rutledge, James Muldrow, Cornelia Reutner, Ryan Malett, and Brian Malosh. Thank you very much for your support. We really appreciate it. If you would like to help us keep all of our shows going and even become an associate producer, visit patreon.com/trekfm for all the details. All right, that's it for this week's episode. Until next week, be sure to track your shipment to the Edge. Did that work?
No.